Okay, good morning everyone, and welcome back to another week of Tehillim. We are starting a new Tehillim today, which is Nun Vav number 56, and we'll do the prelude, so to speak, by Rabbi Foyer, where he explains to us that this Tehillim is similar in vein to what we learned together in Tehillim in Psalm number 34. If you recall over there, we spoke about the Plishtim, the Plishtim king, the king of the Philistines whose name was Achish. And Achish had determined that Dovid HaMelech deserved to be captured and to be killed. And Dovid HaMelech had a miraculous escape from him. And the way that he was able to do it was, he feigned that he was an imbecile, that he was a crazy man. And he found a way to get himself out of the clutches of the enemy. And he went off into safety and off into freedom. In that Tehillim over there, Dovid HaMelech is actually praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he's exalted over the miraculous escape that he had. And it's a very uplifting type of a Tehillim. Over here, the way the Rabbi Foyer understands, although that we'll see in the Mefarshim that we can also find the uplifting part of Dovid HaMelech in this case, but he's more somber in this particular Tehillim, and he's somewhat in shock when he recognizes the terrible danger which he's facing in the palace of Achish over here. Now, what was going on? He has a father-in-law whose name is Shaul HaMelech. Shaul is the king of Klal Yisrael, and he is hunting down David. He's chasing him down to try to catch him. And Dovid has nowhere to go. He cannot rest amongst the Jewish people. He has no place to find safety in. So Dovid HaMelech ends up running off to the non-Jewish world, trying to find a place over there amongst the non-Jews where he perhaps will be able to hide out until things are going to be safe. But even once that he's there, that's Achish and his kingdom, even once that he's there, they turn on him, and he's finished, and he has to run away from there. He has no place to go. Once again, and we're going to see in the way that the commentators explain, Dovid HaMelech finds himself in a situation where once again, he's the king of Klal Yisrael, he is the beloved of the Rabbi Shalom, he is the tzaddik of the generation, and yet he has nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, nowhere to find respite, no one to support him, no one to take care of him, no one to shelter him, no one to guard him, no one to hide. He has nothing. And this is the master of Klal Yisrael at the time. And nevertheless, as we're going to see, Dovid HaMelech doesn't complain, and Dovid HaMelech doesn't allow himself to sink into depression and despair. Dovid HaMelech is, as he has throughout, he will use every situation that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts him into to get closer to Hashem. Nobody can be as down and out as Dovid HaMelech. No matter how great you are, no matter how many wonderful things you've done for your community, for your family, for society, for the world, no one has done what Dovid HaMelech has done. And nobody could find themselves in a situation that is more depressing than Dovid HaMelech, where the world again turns on him, and he's fleeing and running for his life, and he has nowhere to go, and he has no one to protect him. Besides, as he's going to recognize in this Tehillim, all of the protection that he has is only going to be that of Dovid HaMelech, of the Rabbi Shalom. And therefore he writes over here that the spirit of Kedusha, the holiness which envelops Dovid HaMelech at this moment, it causes him not only to bemoan his own personal grief, however, he also relates the woeful tale of the persecuted nation Klal Yisrael. And in this, meaning that just like David his fate was to wander from place to place constantly, so too he recognized that Klal Yisrael also has this terrible fate, that we're going to be the wandering Jews. We're always going to be going from one nation to another, from one exile to another exile. That's the way we are. We're like refugees on the run. And in this way, Dovid HaMelech was able to express himself, as we'll see in the very beginning of this Tehillim, that Yoinas Elem Rechoikim. It's like a silenced dove that is wandering, whose salvation is far away. Dovid HaMelech is saying, not only me am I like this dove that has no voice, and I'm fleeing from my life, Klal Yisrael also will find itself in such a situation, such a position, that we will be running and fleeing and searching and seeking, and sometimes the voice of the Jewish people is not going to be heard. Now, Rav Hirsch is masterful as always, but he brings out so many fundamentals of our Jewish thought in this Tehillim. It's some of the psukim you could probably take weeks on. We'll try to see how far we're going to get today. It says in the beginning of number 56, Lanatseach al yoinas elam rechokim, to Hashem who grants victory upon the silenced dove that is far away. LeDavid michtam be'echois oisai plishtim begas. David is writing this Tehillim over here when the Plishtim took him in the city of Gas, and that was where Achish was the king. So says Rav Hirsch the following idea. He gives a Hagdama, a preamble similar to that of Rabbi Foyer, and then he writes, you have to understand what's going on over here. Dovid HaMelech is the son-in-law of the king Shaul, and the Shaul and the nation of Klal Yisrael really owes their victory and security against the arch enemies to David. David is the one who, when he killed Goliath, he killed Goliath from the Plishtim. Dovid HaMelech is defending the Jewish people. He deserves kudos. He deserves praise. He deserves honor. Instead, everybody's turning their back on him. And so he has no choice but to now flee his own nation. And he has to go take refuge in the very same foes in order to escape death at the hands of the king. So he's going to his enemies to avoid getting caught by the king, his father-in-law. And in the end, even in those hands, he has to flee and he has to run and he has to escape, as we said before, because he feigned that he was insane and therefore he was able to get himself out of it. Now he explains like this. He says, this particular Tehillim is coming to teach us that even when Dovid HaMelech was in a very hopeless state of being, nevertheless, he never allowed himself to get entrenched and sink in hopelessness. On the other hand, he soars to heights of divine inspiration. He was able to see the value of even this experience for his spiritual mission. Dovid HaMelech did not look at his situation in life and get angry and frustrated with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He didn't mope around and feel miserable for himself because he has no place to run, no place to hide, and everyone's hounding him. On the other hand, he realized that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that is putting me through all of this. And it must be that the reason is because this is part of what I need to learn and glean in life so that I should be able to fulfill my ultimate spiritual mission in my lifetime. And that I would be able to face it with I'll face the future with full of vigor and without any fear. Whatever I'll learn during this time, and he's telling you a yesod, he's telling you a foundation of life. Whatever challenges a person will go through in life is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts them through that specifically so that you will gain an understanding and a clarity that you did not have before about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, about yourself, about the world. You have a mission, a task that you are to fulfill in your lifetime. And as you continue to learn on-the-job training, you will take the lessons of this particular Nisayan challenge that you are in, and you will apply it in future situations to be able to overcome in an easier vein. And therefore he says, he's making this Tehillim Lam Natseach. What is Lam Natseach? To him who helps man attain spiritual victory over all of the vicissitudes of fate. Which means, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you know better than I know what I'm destined to become. You know better than me what I need in order to achieve that level that I'll fulfill my mission in life. And therefore, if in fact you're putting me through this right now, as miserable as it seems to be, I know that the reason you're doing it is because I need to gain something in the spiritual victory that's going to take place over here that will help me in other areas and aspects of my life. When a person looks at the challenges in the way that Dovid HaMelech does, where I'm able to see the good and the silver lining, and that there's a benefit that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the master orchestrator of the world, is coming to do for me, so then the challenge does not become overwhelming. The challenge doesn't become something upsetting that drives me crazy. On the other hand, the challenge that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends me in life, I recognize in the beginning of that challenge that the reason I'm going through it is because there's something for me to gain. It will apply to my life right now, but more importantly, it's going to apply to my life in the future. I'm going to be able to become a greater and a better person in situations that might be more trying and more difficult than that which I'm going through right now. And therefore says Dovid HaMelech, it's Lam Natseach. This is a Tehillim for the victor himself. The victor is the Rebbeinu Shalom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings the victory to Dovid HaMelech, and the message is that he brings the victory of our challenges to each of us. And then he says, fine. That's pasuk number 1. Pasuk number 2 over here, the following: Chaneini Elokim, grant me favor, Hashem. Kisha'afani enoish kol hayoim. People are chasing after me all day long. Loichem yilachatzeini, and they are trying to oppress me. So I'm asking you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let me find favor in your eyes, and you should rescue me from the hands of all these people. Says Dovid HaMelech, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm afflicted with such trials in my life, such chastisements, such difficulties. Grant me the spiritual power and the fortitude, even in misery, to discharge the task that you have set me by thus laying your hand heavily upon me. Meaning, I'm getting squashed right now, says Dovid HaMelech. I'm really at a loss of what to do. So I'm asking you, Rebbeinu Shalom, you be the one that is going to come and help me and push me through and pull me along under the circumstances. It's hard. It's not easy. But as we're going to see throughout this Tehillim, that the bitachon of Dovid HaMelech, the trust that Dovid HaMelech has in the Rebbeinu Shalom, is something that will stand by his side through thick and through thin, and will allow him to be able to pull himself out of that which he's in. The next verse, the Rav Hirsch learns 3, 4, and 5 are all going together. Sha'afu, it says, Sha'afu shoyrerai kol hayoim, ki rabim loichamim li moraim. Every day they're lying in wait for me, and there are many that fight for me above. Yom ira ani elecha eftach. On that day on which I should be afraid, I'm not afraid. I put my trust in you, Hashem. Belokim ahalel devarim. In Hashem, I've been afflicted through His words. Belokim batachdi. But I trust in Hashem. Lo ira mayase basami. Whatever anybody wants to do to me, I'm not afraid because I'm in your hands, Hashem. Says Rav Hirsch, beautifully explained. And he says, I look around and I see that there's people that are out to get me. They have rage, they have anger, they have a bone to pick with me. They're trying to get me. And it looks like I have no one to protect me. I have no supporters. I'm really suffering over here. However, what I learned is the following. And that is that the reason that the people are angry with me is because the less that people support me in this world, the more I know that I'm getting support from above, from Hashem. and miraculous things will happen that I will be saved, and my enemies see that I am not going through this by myself, but rather they see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that is taking care of me. And they know that at a time when they think that I should be filled with fear, I'm facing the future unafraid because I trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help. Dovid HaMelech trusted in Hashem for everything. He believed in the Rabbi Shalom for everything. And that was driving his enemies crazy. Because they thought that they would break him. They thought that he would crush him. They thought that they would make him go into a state of miserable depression when he was looked around and he saw that no one's coming to his aid. But Dovid HaMelech said, no. The more that you squash me, the more that you crush me, the less I can rely upon people in this world, the more I realize there's only one person to rely upon, only one being, entity to rely upon, and that's the Rabbi Shalom. And therefore he says that even they know that even though that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given me a grievous blow, which means everybody sees that I'm suffering, says Dovid HaMelech, nevertheless, Ahalil Devaroi, I am going to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why am I praising Hashem in the difficulties of my life? Because I praise that every word of judgment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings my way is really the way that He's manifesting His greatness. And that means that what? When HaKadosh Baruch Hu will chastise me, I fear absolutely nothing. And whatever men are plotting against me, I have no fear of them. Because I trust solely in Hashem. Says Dovid HaMelech, that's why my enemies hate me. It's like, understand, when a husband and a wife get into an argument, or parents and children get into an argument, one of the eitzahs, one of the pieces of advice that we give is just keep your voice calm and don't raise it and don't get agitated. Talk softly and talk calmly when the person that's coming against you is in a fit of rage. So let's say you have a spouse and they get angry with you and they're expecting you to respond in a way that's going to become defensive, and you continue to talk calmly and peacefully, and they could be becoming irate, and the red in their eyes is beating, and the neck muscles are popping out, and the smoke is coming out of the nose, but you sit there calmly and you talk like this. It drives the other person crazy, because they think that they're going to be able to get you to succumb to the same anger and engage you in the fight. Says Dovid HaMelech, my enemies are looking at me and they're waiting for me to fall apart. They're waiting for me to lose it. They're waiting for me to push off the yoke of heaven here and complain that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't take care of me. But it's just the opposite, says Dovid HaMelech. Because I'm going through everything that I'm going through, I realize that there's only one entity in this world that is taking care of me that I can rely upon. That is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore he proclaims his faith in Hashem constantly. And as a result of that, the enemies get even more angry because they see that they can't break him. That's why we find many stories in Nazi Germany during the war. The more that the Yidden held to their Amunah, the more that they held to their Yom Tov, their holidays, their Shabbos, their Kashrus, the more that they held to their Amunah, their Bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the more that the Nazis, Yimach Shemam, got furious and angry with them and ready to kill them. Many, many stories of the Nazi guard who had no reason to kill a Jew, but he killed the Jew anyway. Why? Because he saw that this man was unbreakable in his faith. And he was willing to give up his life rather than commit an Avera. The very famous story, I think there's a book called Incredible about Rabbi Yosef Wallace, who is one of the originators, or one of the greatest supporters in the early years of Arachim, which is the Israeli Kiruv seminar that has makarved tens of thousands of people to Yiddishkeit. And the famous story with him is, and we've told it over the years, he grew up in America. Between Israel and America he grew up, His name was Joey. That's what his parents called him. He was married to a nice Jewish lady from America. They were not religious at all. Not at all. And they eventually moved back to Israel. They were living in Tel Aviv, raising their family. And he was a very successful businessman. And one day his wife calls him to the office. She says, Joey, do me a favor. On your way home, she said, we don't have dinner. On the way home, stop at our favorite restaurant and get us some dinner. He said, no problem. He gets to the restaurant on his way home from work. It's a very sweltering day in Tel Aviv. Everybody knows the humidity over there is horrific. He's standing there in line. Everybody's dripping sweat. They're very uncomfortable. And he's in a line of a restaurant, I think it's called Pil al Hayam. Literally it means the elephant on the sea. But it's a restaurant where they serve chazer. They serve ham and pig and chazer in that restaurant. So here's a Jew named Joey Yosef, standing in the land of Israel, waiting in line to go buy his family pork ribs and ham sandwiches for dinner that night. He's standing in line and he's reviewing in his mind what the menu is going to be. And as he's there, he's sweating and the line is long. And he begins daydreaming. And he daydreams to a famous story that goes in his family the following. His grandfather, I believe was the grandfather, was a religious Jew who ended up going through the war. And he found himself in Auschwitz. And there in Auschwitz, he was very, very makpid, very particular. He refused to eat any food that he knew for sure was not kosher. If he knew there was chazer, if he knew there was meat, he wouldn't eat it. That means he didn't have soup every day, he didn't have this every day. He would eat bread and water, whatever he get his hands on that he felt was kosher enough for him. He wouldn't eat treif. So there was a SS guard who was very bothered by this rabbiner, by this rabbinical figure in the concentration camps who refused to eat non-kosher food. So one day he brings a piece of chazer, pig, in his hand, and he goes over to this man in front of the other inmates that are there, and he says, Rabbiner, Rabbi, he says, you're going to eat this piece of chazer right now. And the rabbi said, I don't eat anything that's not kosher. I'm not going to eat it. And the SS guard says, you're going to eat the piece of chazer right now, or else I'm going to kill you. And he says, then you're going to kill me because I'm not going to eat it. So he shoves with his hand the chazer, the pig, and tries to get it into the mouth of the rabbi here. This is Yosef Wallace's grandfather. And he pushes it out of his mouth and he says, I told you I'm not going to eat it. So he pulls out his gun and he puts it to his head and he says, either you're going to eat the meat or I'm going to kill you. And he looks at the SS guard and he says, I'm not going to eat the meat. And he kills him on the spot in front of everybody. Yosef Wallace wakes up from his daydream and he thinks to himself the following: either I'm crazy or my grandfather was crazy. He said, I'm standing in line. Standing in line. It's hot, it's sweltering, it's humid. I'm uncomfortable. Why? So I could go and buy chazer to bring home and feed it to all of my family. And my grandfather was willing to die not to put one bite of chazer into his mouth. One of us is crazy. I've got to figure out which one it is. And from that brought Rabbi Wallace into a world of arachim, of Yiddishkeit, of Torah, and he and his family, very, very frum people who, because of his support efforts and his drushes and his teaching and his classes, he's been responsible for the return of probably tens of thousands of Jews to Yiddishkeit. Says Dovid HaMelech over here, he said, the reason that my enemies despise me is because they see a man of integrity. They see a man of amun and bitachon. They see a man who doesn't let go of his faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's what gets the wrath burning. That's what gets the fires of anger kindling amongst them. But I am going to continue to do what I do because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from me. And therefore I go faithfully in the pathways of Hashem. Says the Malbim over here the following idea. It says like this. Ki rabim leichem li mimorim. There are many that fight against me. They think they think that in the heavens it has been decreed that I should get killed. And they feel that it's their mission to come and fight against me. But Dovid says it's not true. It's not man who has decided that above they decree that I'm going to get destroyed. On the other hand, above Mimoraim, above in the heavens, they have actually decreed that I'm going to survive and going to live. I trust in you, Hashem. Shiyadati, says the Malbim, because I know. Shemimoraim yavoy ezri. I know that my salvation is going to come from above, from you. There's two reasons why, and he goes on to explain. Number one, you promised me already, Hashem, that I'm going to be the king. I know that it's going to happen. If you promise me, it's going to come true. So I can't get killed right now. And secondly, I trust in you, Hashem. Now listen to these words. Because of my trust in you, it is fitting that you should save me. Because the Rabbi Shalom will save everyone who trusts in him. Says David HaMelech, there are two reasons why I know that my enemies are wrong. Number one, you already promised me that I'm going to be the king. So if you promise, you have to come through with your promise. But number two, and which maybe is even more important, is that my bitachon, my trust in you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, has never wavered. I am with you 100%. And there is a promise that anyone that will trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem is going to rescue them and save them. So my enemies want to destroy me? That's fine. They believe that it's been decreed in heaven that they're going to get me? That's fine. But I know the truth. And the way that Rav Hirsch explains it is as well, that's what's driving my enemies even more crazy. Because they see me, I should be frazzled, I should be stressed out of my mind, I should be anxious, I should not be able to sleep. But Dovid HaMelech, he went to sleep at night, peacefully. He said, Krishna Alamita, laid his head down, he went to sleep like a baby. What do I have to worry about? There's one of the great Rosh Yeshivas, Mekubalim of the generation, is Rav Yaakov Hillel in Eretz Yisrael. Maybe 15 years ago, he came to LA, among one of his visits to LA, and there was a gathering of all the Rabbanim. He came to give them chizuk, to strengthen them. So somebody who was there told me that he said over the following. He has like 8 different yeshivas and kollels. He has a multi-million-dollar budget. Multi-million-dollar. Where are you going to raise multi-millions of dollars? This 15 years ago in Eretz Yisrael, you won't get it. You have to go around the world to raise money. So he said to the Rabbanim, he says, do you think that I am anxious at night because I know that I need another $1 million, another $1 million? You think that I have no menuchas hanefesh, no peace of mind? You think that I'm stressed out beyond belief because I have to raise all this money? He said, I want you to know that when it comes time to go to sleep at night, I lay down in my bed and I fall asleep and I sleep like a baby. Without any worries, without any fears, without any cares. Why? Because I know that I have a yeshiva and I have koilim and I'm taking care of Klal Yisrael for the Rabbi Shalom. I'm doing it for you, Hashem. There's no shortage of money that's in the world. And therefore, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants me to have this yeshiva, and that yeshiva, and this kollel, and that yeshiva, and that school, and have hundreds, if not thousands of talmidim, so that I know HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you, who have the key to all the money in the world, you'll provide me with what I need to be able to take care of your children. So I'm not concerned. I'm not worried. I'm at peace. And if you ever see Rav Yaakov Hillel, you'll see a man who is living with menuchas hanefesh, peace and tranquility and serenity. David HaMelech is saying, am I worried? Am I concerned? Am I in a bad mood? Am I frustrated? No. Because I trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And someone who trusts in HaKadosh Baruch Hu can rely upon the fact that Hashem will save them. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu says He's going to save me, so then I have nothing to worry. And that's driving the enemies of Dovid HaMelech crazy. They wanted to see Dovid get frightened and be in fear and run for his life and start cursing the Rebbeinu Shalom. Chas v'chalila, Dovid says, nothing doing. Ama beitech b'Hashem, and anybody who trusts in HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows he has nothing to worry about. Next verse, Kol hayoim, number 6. Kol hayoim devara ya'atz evo. Every day, they try to cause my words to be sad. Alai kol machshavoisam l'ra. Everything they think about me is only evil. That's what they want. They want that my words will be words I'll express my sadness, because they're thinking terrible things about me all the time. So says Dovid HaMelech, they want to hear come out of my mouth words of sadness, because if they would see me weep, and if they would see me be in a bad mood, and they would see me be tzabrach and broken, and I would give up and throw in the towel, they will rejoice. They'll rejoice if I'm wailing. But instead, what do I do, says Dovid HaMelech? I take my harp. He was the master musician of the harp, the angelic music. I take my harp in my hand and I play beautiful music to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and as we'll see, I praise and I sing to Hashem. So this, I was just thinking that this really is the exact way that the Yetzer Hara works with a person. He wants a person to get sadness in their thoughts, and he wants a person to utter words and statements of being overwhelmed, of being sad, of being frustrated, of being angry, of being upset, of giving up, of despairing. That's what the Yetzer Hara wants. He doesn't want to hear you say, I trust in Hashem. He doesn't want to see you be Amakabel, Kol Diavad, Rahman Avid. Whatever Hashem does, it's all for the good. That's poison to the Yetzer Hara. It's like kryptonite against the Yetzer Hara. He wants to hear you say, oh Hashem, how could you do this to me? What's happening in my life? I'm miserable. I'm a wreck. It's horrible what's going on. That's what the Yetzer Hara wants, because when you start talking like that, the Yetzer Hara, then he just has free reign all over your brains, all over your heart, all over your emotions, all over. He can taint the tops of your soul over there. And therefore a person has to remember that when you're going through a hard time, the words that come out of our mouth are not "Ay." The words that come out of our mouth are HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I know that everything you do is for the good. I know that you're only putting me through what you're putting because you want to make me greater and stronger so that I will be able to fulfill my mission and my task here in life. And therefore I will not get down. And I will not fall into the trap of the Yetzer Hara. And I will not let my enemies anger me and upset me and frustrate me. On the other hand, I'll use the opportunity to cling even stronger to you, Hashem. Now I'm going to skip a little bit. I'm going to Pasuk 9, the 9th verse. Noidi sefarta ata, you counted my wanderings in advance. Sima dimasi b'noedecha, you place my tears in your flask, in your vessel. Halei b'sivasecha, and aren't you counting my tears? Says Rav Hirsch over here, a very beautiful idea, and something that should give us all a lot of hope and a lot of courage and strength to overcome the challenges of life. Because he says like this, I'm in exile, I'm going through a hard time, there are nisyonos that are piling up around me. As we mentioned before, Dovid is running from the Jewish enemy, from the non-Jewish enemy, trying to find a place to go that he can get back to his palace. He's got nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Everyone's turned against him. Everybody's out to get him. This is Dovid HaMelech. But he says, I know that you already counted the days of my exile in advance. You already decided how long this nisayon is going to last in my life. And it was not the violence of men who caused me to be in this situation, but rather it's your hashgacha pratis, it's your divine providence that is putting me through the test. Just stop for a moment and understand what he's saying. That there are people that we come in contact with in our lives, and we look at them as putting us through nisyonos. We think that they are challenges in our life, and we think that it's them that are making things difficult. Says David HaMelech, it's you, Ribono Shel Olam. If you would not allow for this person to come into my life and do what they have done, it would never have happened. It's only because you have decreed that this is the nisayon that I need to go through in my life. That's why this person was given the freedom to do what he's doing. That's why this situation has happened to me right now. That's why the money is hard, or the children are hard, or the parnas is hard, or the shidduchim are hard. That's why, not because the shadchan, not because the doctor, not because the Rebbe in school did this. No, it's all you, Ribono Shel Olam. And David HaMelech is reaffirming his tremendous faith in Hashem, which leaves him in a state of happiness and joy and comfort, because he knows that HaKadosh Baruch Hu already pre-planned what is going to be. And he says that if you didn't desire that this should happen, no human being would be able to lift a finger against me. If you didn't decree that this is what I need to fulfill my mission, my purpose in life, if you didn't decide, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's what I need to be able to go around and to through things, so then nobody would be able to lift a single finger against me. But you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you already counted out in advance the weeks, the days, the hours that I must remain in a state of flight and exile. It's all what you have already determined. There's something called fate. Yes, there is something in Judaism called fate. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you determine in your masterful hashgacha, the way that you run the world, this is the way that it's going to be in my life. I should get angry at this person? I should get upset with that person? No. You would never have allowed them to come into my life if it wouldn't be for the fact that that's what you want. And therefore, I turn to you, Hashem, and I turn to you in praise, and I turn to you in expression of my thoughts. I turn to you in my tefillah, my prayers. I turn to you because you are the one who put me in this situation, and you are the one that is going to pull me out of this situation as well. Further, in the 10th verse, Oz yashuvu oivai ochar bayoim, then my enemies shall turn their back on the day, ekra, that I call out. Now I know that Hashem is with me. Says Rav Hirsch the following: when the days of my suffering will come to an end, which means the appointed days that you have predetermined that I have to suffer, when it will come to an end, then my enemies are going to turn back. They'll be gone. They'll be gone. As quickly as they came, that's as quickly as they're going to disappear and go away. So many stories of the person that was diagnosed with Rahman al-Zan, a terrible disease, and they ended up going. There's a beautiful ma'aseh with Chaim Kanievsky. I think I might have told it over in Shul by one of the Shabbos drashas, but there was a young boy, I don't remember, 6, 7 years old. He wasn't feeling well. The father took him to the hospital late at night, an emergency, and they began running tests on him, and they saw that lo and behold, he had he had a cancer in his brain, a brain tumor. They wanted to do immediate surgery to save him. So it was 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and this father did not want to do anything without getting a bracha of Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky. So he calls his Rosh Kollel, and the Rosh Kollel says, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. He says, I know, but you're very close to Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky. My son is in the hospital. They say he has a brain tumor. Please do me a favor. Let's go to Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky. He's already up learning. I need a bracha to make sure everything's going to be okay. So the Rosh Kollel says, fine, come pick me up. So he runs out of the hospital. He picks up the Rosh Kollel. They drive from Yerushalayim to Bnei Brak, 45-minute drive. They come to Rav Chaim. They knock on the door. He's already awake learning. And he begins pouring out his heart, crying. And Rav Chaim says, where's your son? He says, he's in the hospital. He said, I need to see your son here in order to give the proper bracha. Bring me your son. So the father drives back quickly to Yerushalayim. He goes into the hospital. He tells the doctors, I need to take my son for a blessing from Reb Chaim Kanievsky. So with a little pull and this and that, they take him out of the hospital, drive him out to Bnei Brak, bring him to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. He says, Reb Chaim Kanievsky says, let me see the boy. And he says to the boy, tell me. He says, what do you want to become when you grow up? So the boy looks with purity in his eyes, and he says, Kamoicha, I want to be like you, Rabbi. Reb Chaim Kanievsky looks at the father, and he says, you have nothing to worry about. The boy is going to be fine. Go back to the hospital. Tell them to take another CAT scan. He has nothing. They drive back to Yerushalayim. They go to the hospital. He says to the doctor, he says, before you operate on my son, take another CAT scan. There's nothing wrong with him. Reb Chaim Kanievsky said, there's nothing wrong with him. The doctor starts laughing. He says, sir, you were just here. We just took it a couple of hours ago. We saw a tumor the size of a golf ball in his head. We know that it's there. He said, it doesn't go away just like that. He said, listen, the father says, Rav Chaim Kanievsky told me I have nothing to worry about. Take another CAT scan, please. There's nothing there. You don't have to open him up. So the doctor was very curious. He said, listen, I'll make you a deal. He says, really, we shouldn't cover this according to the way that it works, insurance and medical. I'll tell you like this. I'll do the CAT scan. If the tumor is still there, you're going to pay for it. If the tumor is not there anymore, he said, I'll pay for it. The father said, fine, let's do it. They take a CAT scan, they check his head, and the doctor comes back with the results. He's holding two pictures in front of him, and he says to the father, I don't understand what happened. He said, but whatever we saw in the first pictures, it's not there anymore. There is no tumor in his brain. Your son does not have a brain tumor. He doesn't need any surgery at all. The father cries for joy. He hugs his son. He hugs the doctor. He tells his son, quick, let's go to Reb Chaim Kanievsky and tell him the miracle that just took place. So they quickly jump in the car. They drive back to Bnei Brak again. And they come to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. And they say, Rebbe, how did you know? It's a nace. It's a miracle. How did you know? And he said, it's not a nace. He said, I asked your son what he wants to become. He said, Kamoich, he wants to become like me. When you left my house, I turned my eyes towards Shemayim. I began crying, and I says, Ribono shel olam, you have a young boy who wants to become a tzaddik in his life. He wants to become a special person in Klal Yisrael. How could you take him away at such a young age? You must give him refuah shlema. So your son's merit and his schus that he wants to be such a heilig, such a holy Jew. Therefore, that's why he was redeemed. Says Dovid HaMelech over here, the same idea, and that is, I know that all the troubles that you put me through had its time, had its message, had its reason over here. And therefore, he says that when others are going to see me, and he writes over here that there's a particular time, and once that I get through the suffering that I have to go through, that's it. Everything goes away. When I went through, like this father over here, he went through the davening and the bitachon and the crying and everything, and then when it was time for the suffering to end, it's over just like that. It came and it left. So to Dovid HaMelech said, I needed it, now it's gone. I showed my trust in you, Hashem. I showed my belief in you, HaKadosh Baruch. I put in my tefillas to you, HaKadosh Baruch. So now you can take it away. And he says, others see me suffering, and they think that HaKadosh Baruch has taken the side of my enemies. But I know not like that. I know that beyond the shadow of a doubt, HaKadosh Baruch Hu only makes me suffer because He desires my welfare. And that is what we keep saying over and over again in this particular Tehillim. And that is that all that a person is going to go through in their life is because Hashem just wants to bring us closer to Him, and there's messages for us that we must learn. So the Metzudas Dovid says now in this the next verse, Belokim Mahalel Davar, B'Hashem Mahalel Davar, in through Hashem I've been afflicted, but I will praise the word, even, and then I have been enveloped with his chesed, with his loving kindness, and I will praise his word. So let's first see over here the Rav Hirsch, and then we'll see Metzudas Dovid. And he says like this, that means that David HaMelech, at this point in his life, that's the way Rav Hirsch understands, is that David was saying something that would forever change his life and how he would deal with every single nisayon, every challenge. And that is, I will accept every challenge in my life as Devar Hashem, as the word of Hashem. It's a part of the mission. And part of that is Lahalel. Once I recognize that what you are putting me through is the Devar Hashem, is the word of Hashem, it's incumbent upon me Lahalel to praise you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because the suffering that I endure in my life, whether it's coming through the suffering of Elokim, which is the midah, the trait of judgment, or it is the joy that I experience through the name of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. If you look in that verse in number Yud Aleph 11, it says Be'elokim, meaning judgment comes through Elokim, and the Chesed comes through Yud Kei Vav Kei, Hashem's name of Chesed. It doesn't really matter. Whatever is taking place in my life, it's all the Devar Hashem, it's all your word, God. Whether I am suffering or whether I'm being blessed, whether things I'm failing or I am succeeding, whether I will find curse or if I'm blessing, it's all the Devar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all coming from you, Hashem. And that means that my whole spiritual content of who I am is someone that must recognize you, Ribbono Shel Olam. I have to recognize that is you. And he's revealing the essence of the way that he looked at life at this moment in his Tehillim. And that is, whether it's bad or whether it's good, it's all the same in the eyes of Hashem. And everything that I'm being placed in my life is only to be able to bring me to the fruition of my mission. And therefore, David looked at it that his task in life was, I must praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu no matter what it is that I'm going through. Because David knew that if he'll fulfill his mission in life, which is to deal with the difficulties and the challenges and to learn from them and to grow from them, what's going to happen? There'll be a greater manifestation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's glory and his power in this world. And therefore David said, any change that I will have in my life, for better or for worse, it's all part of the training course to teach me how to fulfill my task and my mission. And David knew that suffering as well as joy were both essential ingredients in the training course of life. David understood this. Like he says earlier in Tehillim, it's the rod and the staff. Hemi and Nachamuni, they are the things that comfort me. The rod is hitting me, the staff is supporting me. Whatever you are doing to me, Ribbono Shel Olam, I acknowledge and I recognize it's all what I need to create and to forge a greater relationship together with you. Says the Metzudas Dovid, whether you deal with me strictly, Shu Adin, Ahalel Devarai, I'll praise you, Hashem. Hashem, Shu Rachamim, and whether you treat me mercifully, with mercy, so Ahalel Devarai, I will also praise your word. V'yavarech ala ra, I'll make a blessing on the bad, K'may ala toiva, just like I make a blessing on the good. David HaMelech was able to see clearly that Gam zu l'toiva, that everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is for the good. He was able to see that even if something looks like it's not good, it's really good. Even if something looks like it's bad, the goodness is, even if you don't recognize you'll never find the goodness in the bad, but the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts me through it and strengthens me in my emunah and my bitachon and my connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that makes something that looks bad, makes it good. If I utilize the difficult situation to get closer to Hashem, then by the very definition, that makes it something that is good. And to close off this Tehillim, he says in verse number 12, Belokim Batachli, I trusted in Hashem. Lo ira ma yaseh adam li, I don't worry about what anybody's going to do to me. Meaning that since that I'm so aware of the closeness of HaKadosh Baruch in my life, I'm safe under HaKadosh Baruch's protection. I have nothing to worry about. Alei Elokim nedarecha. Therefore, it's incumbent upon me, says Dovid, that I must, the vows that I pledge to you, I have to make sure that I pay them. Ashalim, toideis lach, I will pay them to you many times. So David HaMelech is saying over here the following, and that is that since that you do many things to me, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there are many different blessings, even though that there's curses along the way. There are judgments, although there are good things that you bring me. In all of my life, there's been gladness, there's been sorrow, there's been good times and bad times and heights and highs and lows and all different things. But Allah, it's upon me, says David HaMelech, to keep in my heart that everything that you do for me is all for the best. And therefore, whatever the situation is, I have an obligation to come and to pay tribute to you, whether it's joy or affliction of life. Like the stories from the Holocaust, where the people that were there, that were going through everything, they found ways to see the good in that which they were struggling with. They found ways to help another Jew. In the darkest of moments, they would shave off some crumbs from their bread and give it to somebody else who was about to die. All of that because even in the bad, you could find that there's going to be good. And therefore he continues to pay his tributes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even amidst his suffering. And we conclude in the last verse, Ki hitzalta nafshi mimaves, you saved my soul from death. Halaranglai midechi, my feet from stumbling. Lishalech livnei Elokim be'or hachayim, to go with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Or HaChaim, in the light of life. And he says like this, that even amongst my affliction, I came to know two aspects of your salvation. Number one, says David, you delivered me from danger of the physical annihilation. I had all these enemies chasing after me. They wanted to kill me and destroy me. It's miraculous that I survived all of that. You saved me from there. And secondly, the spiritual support that you rendered to my heart and my mind, you gave me the strength. You gave me the fortitude. You gave me the ability to see the good in the bad, to strengthen myself and my emunah, my bitachon. And therefore that gives me the strength to be able to withstand all of the tests, the suffering that I have to go through, and therefore I will be safe from making any error. A person who doesn't have enough emunah and bitachon, when they will go through a challenge in life, what will end up happening? They will end up looking at it in the wrong way. They'll get angry and sad and despair and say, why me? What's Hashem doing? Or where is Hashem? He's not even here. But David says, you fortified my spiritual side. You strengthened my emunah, my bitachon. And therefore, when I go through the challenges of life, I will not make a mistake. I will recognize that it's all you. And therefore he says that even when I'm faced with the sternest decrees, that God seems to put me through death and night, darkness, hardships, nevertheless, I shall behold the hand of Hashem. And li'ishalech be'or hachayim, I will continue with all of my strength to go with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the light of life. My mind will be clear, my spirit will be soaring, I will be strong. That's the key to overcoming all of the nisyonos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts a person through. The minute that your mind gets cloudy, the minute that your mind gets dark, the minute that your mind gets filled with frustration and animosity towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you cannot handle the nisyon. You don't know what to do to overcome it. But says David HaMelech, I'm not like that, because you taught me and you showed me the way. And therefore I keep my mind strong, I keep my heart connected to you. My emunah, my bitachon is right there together with you. As a result of that, I keep clarity. I see things the way that they are. I see what I'm going to learn from this situation, how I'm going to do things better next time. Maybe I'll take the lesson that you taught me, I'll use it to help somebody else in their life. Whatever it is that I have gone through, how many People that were once upon a time drug addicts, but they overcame the challenge. They are the ones that are giving strength and chizuk and inspiration and guidance to people that are struggling themselves. How many? Tons. Why? Because what they went through and they overcame taught them a lesson that they were able to go then and share that with somebody else. How many people have struggled in marriages, but they stood the test of time. They went through the therapy, they worked things out, and now they have beautiful marriages. And they are the ones that go and they give chizuk to other people. How to be a better husband, how to be a better wife, how to be more patient. You can learn from what I did right, what I did wrong. Says David HaMelech, you taught me everything, Hashem. And you allowed me through these challenges in my life to garner an identity and a sense of self. And then as he writes over here, I'm coming with clarity. When a person is clear in what they're going through, they don't stumble, they don't fall, they don't make mistakes. The reason that we don't overcome our challenges in life is not because the challenge is too daunting for us to be able to overcome. Hashem would never give us a test that we can't overcome. It's just that our mind gets dark and warped and cloudy and we can't see anymore the emes, the light. But David says, I'm not like that. I kept my mind clear. I'm with the Or HaChaim, with the light of life is illuminating my vision so that I should be able to make the decisions that are best for me in order that I should be able to do that which you want. And that's why he says over here in the Radak, Kevin shebetachti b'cha, I trusted in you, Hashem. I'm not worried about what anybody else is going to do to me. Nobody can hurt me. Yeah, and nobody can hurt me because it's all coming from you, Hashem. In Yetz Hashem, number one, in Yetz Hashem, we'll finally start learning together in person again. That's number one wish for today. Number two is that everybody will go through challenges in life. Everybody will go through challenges in life. There's not a single person in the world that doesn't have challenges. It's all a question of how you're going to respond to it. If you have light in your mind, if your eyes are seeing things clear, if your thoughts are flowing properly, so then when you come to the challenge, you'll automatically begin seeing, a person plays chess. I don't know if you play chess, but a good chess player is always a few steps ahead, seeing where to move this and where to move that. A person is playing the chess game of life. And when he starts going through difficulties, he's always a few steps ahead. He knows what he needs to do to get out of this situation and that situation. And then Be'ez Hashem, he's a winner. Winner is someone that trusts in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, keeps his mind focused and clear, does not allow themselves to get overwhelmed and anxious by the nisyonos they're going through, but rather recognize it's all part of Hashem's plan to help me fulfill my mission and my task in life. May we be Zoichem Yetz Hashem to recognize the goodness of Hashem, the kindness of Hashem, the mercy of Hashem, that even in the difficulties that He puts us through, that's also for us to become a greater person, which is also Hashem's chesed and kindness. And in that zechus, we'll overcome our nisyonos. We can help other people overcome their nisyonos. And when Klal Yisrael reaches that tikkun, where we overcome the challenges of life that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to come, He'll bring the ultimate Bi'or HaChaim, the light of life, with the Bi'as Goyal Tzedek, the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, B'mheira v'yameinu.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Amazing shir as usual.
Have a wonderful week, everyone.